She has red hair and is the queen of country music. She has sold more than 75 million songs, won every award in the business, and built an empire that spans from Broadway to Hollywood. Reba McEntire had a beautiful smile and wore glittery dresses, but she had scars that no one saw. Since she is 70 years old, she doesn't need to protect the image that Nashville wanted. She is ready to name the 5 men who hurt her the most, men she used to trust and who thought she would never speak up again. For decades, she hid her anger behind love songs and sad songs about broken hearts. The truth is now heavier than the music, and the quiet is like a prison. Reba says it's not to get back at someone or spread rumors, to stay alive. See why these 5 guys hurt Reba McEntire so much and how they helped her become the legendary woman she is today. Reba Nell McEntire was born in McAlester, Oklahoma, on March 28, 1955. She grew up in Chalky, a small town. Ranch life, hard work, rodeos, and the kind of grit that can only be found on the Oklahoma plains shaped her youth. People loved and feared her father, Clark McEntire, who was a 3-time world champion steer roper. He was proud like a cowboy and had the firm grip of a father figure who rarely let go. Reba used music to get away from that bad world. On long rides to rodeos, she sang in the car with her brothers and they would harmonize. Even back then, her voice stood out. Her mother, Jacqueline, saw how talented she was and pushed her to do better. But there was a first betrayal in her simple, close-knit life. It wasn't in Nashville or Hollywood, it was in her own group. Reba has talked a lot about how her tough dad shaped her, but it wasn't until much later that she admitted how badly his rude words hurt her. He never really liked her songs. Lots of times he told her that singing wasn't a real job and was saint. Cupid. Those words stuck in her mind. He even told her straight out that she wasn't good enough to make it sometimes. Those words were poison for a young girl with dreams bigger than Chalky's Field of Dreams, but they were also used as fuel. She didn't like the question. She was angry about being fired and the fact that her father, the man she wanted to impress the most, couldn't see what her mother saw. It was her first taste of how men, especially strong men in her life, would try to tell her what she couldn't do. That hurt made her stronger. She didn't give up. Instead, she worked even harder. She went to Southeastern Oklahoma State University to study singing. He sang at rodeos and other small events as well. She promised to show her father he was wrong every time he told her not to follow her dreams. And when fate stepped in and made country singer Red Stagel notice her while she sang the national anthem at the 1974 National Finals Rodeo in Oklahoma City, it was like the door had finally been opened. It hurt her even more when her father didn't believe her, even as her fame grew. She later said that it pushed her more than any fan, critic, or boss could have. Deep down, she hated that he never told her she was beautiful, but she kept that anger inside, even as everyone started to see her as having one of the best sounds in country music. As Reba McEntire put together her list, the first man wasn't a cheating partner or a shady investor. Clark McEntire, her father, taught her that hate and love can exist together, and that the people we look up to the most can sometimes be the ones who hurt us the most. In the mid-1970s, when Reba first came to Nashville, it was a confusing place full of shady deals, smoky bars, and people who controlled every way to fame. A young woman from Oklahoma who was polite but stubborn saw the business world as a storm ready to happen. Men often gave her cold looks because they thought country music should stay a man's game. Her singing was undeniable, though. She got her first record deal in, but the machine that was supposed to help her rise almost buried her. She was told what songs to sing, how to dress, and even how to smile. They didn't see her as an artist. They saw her as a product, another voice they could load into the Nashville factory. One of those executives was a man whose name Reba doesn't say very often, but whose power almost got her into trouble. He told her she shouldn't try to make ballads and songs with stories because they were too risky. Bland songs that never sounded like her real voice, that she was just another small-town girl who could be switched out if she didn't follow the rules. He made that clear. Reba hated him for what he said and what he stood for, the cockiness of a business built by men who never thought a woman could run it. She would talk about how helpless she felt in those early years, when she was bound by contracts and men laughed at her when she tried to stand up for herself. They wanted her to be quiet, pretty, and good. That wasn't Reba, though. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, she started to push harder, recording songs that sounded good with her singing even when executives told her not to. That's not all Reba felt when her 1984 record, My Kind of Country, became a big hit. It was a war cry against all the men who told her she wasn't good enough and all the executives who told her to stay in her own little world. They were wrong about her because she had platinum songs, tours that sold out, and a voice that wouldn't be shut down. People in power who tried to crush her spirit became like the man who thought less of her. She told no one how much she hated that time in secret. It hurt her so much to know that someone who had a lot of power over her future wanted her to fail. But her anger turned into a shield. It made her take charge of her career and become one of the first female country stars to really run her own show. She became famous not only as a singer, but also as a businessman who could beat the Nashville machine and stay in business longer. Over time, she did more than just beat the men who tried to rule her. She put them in their place at the top. But she would never forget his face, what he said, or how he waved her off. For Reba, he was the second man on her list and a symbol of how things were set up to hurt her before she could grow. It got tough for Reba in her personal life as her business took off. Fame drew attention to them. Love that went bad was one of the bad things that came with it. She got married to Charlie Battles in 1976. He was a steer wrestler and more than 10 years older than her. At first, he seemed like a good protector who could relate to her tough rodeo background. Behind closed doors, though, their marriage was tense and controlled. Charlie would rather Reba be at home than on stage. He wanted her energy to flow into him, not into a crowd of thousands of people. When she went on music trips, fights happened. He was jealous of her fame and how many fans loved her. He also didn't like how free she felt because of her fame. Reba stayed, though, because she grew up in a family where trust was very important. She put everything she had into the marriage, even though it made her feel empty. She tried for years to be a wife and a star at the same time, but as her career took off, the cracks in her marriage got bigger. By the middle of the 1980s, she was a well-known star. She won Female Vocalist of the Year at the CMAs, sold out venues, and became the voice of a new group of country music fans. At home, though, the stress was too much to handle. Charlie made fun of her hopes and dreams and tried to remember her that she was still his no matter how successful she became. Reba later said that leaving Charlie was one of the hardest things she had ever done. She asked for a divorce in 1987 after being married for 11 years. She hated the man he turned into and how he tried to tie her success to his ego. She hated that he couldn't enjoy her wins because they made him feel small, but she found freedom in hating him. It taught me to respect myself and understand that a crown with chains is not something I want to wear. The story ended, but the wounds were still there. She would fall in love with Narvel Blackstock, who was her boss. At first they were deeply in love and wanted to work together. Narvel saw how talented she was and helped her make her business even better, from concerts to becoming a TV star. At first, she thought she had finally found a guy who would walk with her instead of try to pull her away. But after a while, even that love grew cold. After 26 years of marriage, they split up in 2015. Reba said it was a surprise she didn't see coming. Narvel quickly moved on with someone else, and even though Reba hid her pain, people who knew her well said it broke their hearts. She trusted him, her job and decades of her life only to be caught off guard. That's when the old wound of betrayal came back stronger than ever. Because Charlie was jealous and Narvel had left her, Reba had learnt a painful truth. When guys say they love you the most, they can hurt you the most. Another reason on her list was a bad love story. One more thing to remember, that the Queen of Country's heart wasn't just made of music, it was also made of hate and broken hearts. In Nashville, getting ahead doesn't come for free. Reba McEntire paid the price with more than just broken hearts from failed relationships. She also had to deal with men who didn't see her as a partner, but as a paycheck. As the 1990s began, Reba was more than just a singer. She was a brand. Her albums and shows made a lot of money, and her name was known in fields other than country music. But with money and fame came thieves, and one man left a wound that would never heal. He was Reba's business partner, and she trusted him with her money and investments while she focused on singing and performing. At first, he seemed loyal. He was always at meetings, always giving her advice, and always telling her that he would take care of her business. Behind the nice clothes and words of comfort, though, was a plan that almost cost her everything. Reba found out too late that he had been theft, taking advantage of her, and using her name to get what he wanted. There was more than just stolen money at stake. Faith was also broken. The news was devastating for a woman whose career was built on trust and who took pride in treating her team like family. She had faith in him, stood up for him, and even ignored rumors that he wasn't telling the truth from people in the business. And when she found out the truth, she was ashamed and angry. She was angry at both what he did and how stupid it made her feel. She told no one that business betrayal hurt even more than personal betrayal, because love at least has risks. But being clear and honest is what business is all about. In that world, being tricked felt like having the ground ripped out from under her. It changed how she did things. After that, Reba became much more guarded and careful about who she let into her business circle. She started to take charge of every part of her business. She kept an eye on deals and contracts to make sure that no one could ever rob her blind again. Still, the hate stayed. Even after many years, when she talked about trust, she would bring up those betrayals and men who smile at you while gently cutting the strings under your feet. That man's name was added to her list permanently. She never had to say it because the pain spoke for itself. That man was a warning that fame brings out the bad in people, and that the worst cuts don't always happen in the heart, but on the soul of your work. That anger turned into armor for Reba. With her comedy, clothing line, and continued dominance in country music, she became more successful on TV and turned a colder eye towards people who said they were on her side. The betrayal taught her how to hold on tight to the reins of her kingdom and run it with both hands. But the hate never went away. She could still remember it like a scar on a notebook, proof that every dollar she made was haunted by the man who tried to steal her money and her truth.